And good evening and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Also on YouTube at youtube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel. I am Chad Holmes, along with former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster. And Coach, without Ian here, we're at least starting off, we're in different rooms, but we have cameras on each other so we can actually see each other. But good to see you over there behind the glass.
Good to be back, yeah. Different setup, but still be good.
And coming up on the show today, we will have at about 6:30 the head football coach of Abbotsford High School, coming off a very solid 39-0 win over Iola Scandinavia last week, Jacob Knapmiller. 2-1 Falcons after a couple of good wins against Colby and IS the last 2 weeks. So we'll talk to Coach Jacob Knapmiller coming up at 6:30. And then after the top of the hour news update at 7:06, our student-athlete guest for this week from Wausau West High School, multi-sports standout Shay Jones. So that's all coming up here on the program tonight. But let's jump right in terms of what happened last week in high school football. Wisconsin Valley Conference, and again, it's always good to start the games where we saw the games in its entirety, as last Friday night, right here on 98.9 WXCO, it was the opener in the Wisconsin Valley Conference as Wausau West knocked off Eau Claire North by a score of 35-21. So the Warriors improved to 2-1 overall. Eau Claire North is 0-3. Joe Gravine, 8 of 11, 162 yards and 3 touchdowns, also added 7 rushes for 61 yards. Miles Waldvogel, 21 rushes, 89 yards and a touchdown, plus 3 catches, 70 yards and a score. Shay Jones, again, our student-athlete guest for later on in the show, 3 catches, 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. And for the second straight week, Tegan Rasmus scores a touchdown, not the normal way on offense. It was an interception return against Hudson, and then it was a blocked punt return touchdown last week against Eau Claire North. So Warriors 35, Huskies 21. And I guess I'll say, what was your take? First Wisconsin Valley Conference game for Wausau West. You'd love to get off to the 1-0 start in the league. Fell behind, but then were able to respond and earn the W.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that went well for the Warriors that night, and certainly a lot of things that Coach Johnson's probably working on this week. Some nice performances, kind of like you said. Joe Gravine continues to be consistent and throwing the ball and being efficient and doing that and getting touchdowns. And we'll talk more about it with Shay when he's here. But the one thing that really seems to stand out about Shay this year is his ability, what he does after he catches the ball. It seems like last year a lot of those were wide open and catching them and pretty running, but I've been really impressed with how he's handled what he's done with the ball in his hands after he makes the catch. And Tegan Rasmus, I think he's up to I think that's like his 5th career defensive touchdown. I know he had 2 in a game last year. He's got back-to-back weeks this year. So I think there's definitely some areas where they look really, really good. But certainly some work to do, and I think Eau Claire North too. I think they're still trying to find themselves. I think on paper, they look really good. They got some really outstanding skilled players. They just struggle to consistently throughout the course of a game put it all together.
DC Everest earned their first win of the season, 1-2 overall, 1-0 in the conference, as they went to Southwood County and knocked off the Lincoln Red Raiders of Wisconsin Rapids 41-6. Corbin Enzenroth, 15 rushes, 175 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Quarterback Jake Stasiak was 8 of 13, 126 yards and a score. Andrew Bankston had 4 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. Wisconsin Rapids quarterback Owen Richardson was 16 of 32, 186 yards and a touchdown. Cohen Lehman had 6 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. So DC Everest going back to the recipe that worked very well for them last season, having a running back that's able to get some good production, get some good scoring. Their quarterback was efficient. He got knocked out of the game, however, but was efficient when he was in there, and the defense able to be solid as well.
Yeah, I think the Everest's ability to rush the ball, kind of that's where everything starts for them, and obviously Enzenroth had a really nice game, 175 yards. I think it speaks to maybe Everest kind of finding themselves. They desperately needed a win, right? They had 2 really tough non-conference opponents first 2 weeks to get started, and they were looking for a get-right week, and it looks like they got it. And I think much like most high school teams, your offense kind of runs off your run game, and it looks like they were able to figure that out Friday night, and I'm sure we'll look to, especially with potential quarterback issues, we'll look to continue that this Friday.
And we'll definitely talk about the West Everest matchup coming up on Friday, one of those fun games here in the Wausau area, game that we'll have on 98.9 WXCO. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit later in the program. Stevens Point continues their winning ways. The Panthers are 3-0 on the season, knocking off Eau Claire Memorial 56-21. ECM still looking for their first win. Trent Breitbach did it all. He had 12 of 21 passing, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns, added 17 rushes, 141 yards, and 4 touchdowns. When their quarterback is responsible for 8 touchdowns in a game, that usually means a successful night at the office for your squad. Johnny Ananitis had 4 catches, 177 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You talk about the average. That is trying to use some real quick math, but that's upwards of more than 40 yards per catch for very talented Johnny Ananitis. Marcus Holmberg for Eau Claire Memorial, 14 of 26, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Stevens Point has done everything that they're supposed to do this season up to this point, but I would say that at this point they have not played maybe the level of competition that maybe, say, a DC Everest has played so far.
For sure. I would say strength of schedule, they are not at the top for that, but like you said, you play who's on your schedule, and in doing that, I mean, Eau Claire Memorial has played some other tough opponents to start this season, and I'm not sure anybody put 56 on them either. So I think it definitely speaks to where Memorial is, a little bit like where North is when we talk about Wausau West. But I would say, I mean, we talked about at the end of last week. What were we looking forward to last week? And my response was to kind of start to see where things shake out and where people are going to put themselves in the conference. And I think there's no question through 3 weeks that Spash has definitely put themselves on top of the Wisconsin Valley Conference and will sit there until somebody knocks them off.
I think Marshfield would love to have people say, well, they haven't had the toughest of schedules so far, because Marshfield has had a very, very tough schedule so far. And the Tigers had to go to Rice Lake last Friday night and fell 30-16. Rice Lake 3-0, Marshfield 0-3. This was a non-conference game, but a crossover game that does have what's the word?
Playoff implications.
Playoff implications, because when you all the conferences in Wisconsin 11-player football, they play 7 conference games, but in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, they only play 6 conference games. They have to find a 7th game to kind of throw in there to be able to figure out whether or not you're playoff eligible. So, yes, in terms of the conference, it does not hurt them, but it does hurt them in terms of trying to get to that point where you get, in all likelihood, 3 wins in conference to earn a playoff spot. Hayden Carlson had 12 rushes, 73 yards for the Tigers. Ethan Femmel was 8 of 15, 89 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Camden Colstand had 5 catches, 63 yards, and a score. Marshfield passing the football as a team, 12 of 22, 136, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but only 59 yards rushing as a team. And that obviously will not be quite to the level of a Rice Lake team that always puts up huge rushing numbers, 337 yards rushing as a team. But boy, those Marshfield Tigers, they have to feel like they've been through the ringer in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, and we kind of, when you compare some of the other opponents and look at it, I mean, that seems to be, I mean, when you're able to rush the football, you have some success. Nobody's really done it for 3 straight weeks to this point other than Spash, who's proven to be able to do that. I think Marshfield is a huge question mark for us yet. Like you said, they've had probably the strongest strength of schedule without question. And they've been pretty consistent in those. They've been scoring about 2 scores a game and have not seemed to have been able to get over that hump. I think they had 14 or 16 the week before as well. So it'll be interesting. You mentioned playoff implications. First time we've used these words this year, and I know there's a little different formula this year. I know that as far as the divisions are already established, so we'll maybe have to take a little time in the next couple of weeks to dig into that a little bit and figure out what exactly that means as we start talking wins and losses and conference wins and all that.
Yeah, hopefully somebody will do all the heavy lifting for us and have it posted somewhere we can steal it, because a lot of numbers will be involved, and that's not going to be the easiest thing to deal with. So,
agreed.
So that is night number 1 of the Wisconsin Valley Conference. I guess before we wrap up the Valley, what jumped out about the Valley in week 1 for you?
I think I don't think there were any great matchups. I mean, realistically, I think most of them were fairly predictable. And I think everyone kind of took care of business and did what was expected of them, with maybe Marshfield Rice Lake being a little bit of a toss-up, but for the most part, pretty similar. And I think right now it's a kind of a SPASH-led conference. And then we'll see once they start playing some tougher competition what that looks like for them.
I will say that for a team like Everest, who had such a tough start, all of a sudden you play one conference game, you're 1-0 in conference, and boy, you feel a whole lot better, don't you?
Yeah, it really does. And what we learned last year about all these teams in our conference is these games mean something as far as getting into the playoffs, but when you come to week 10, week 11, none of this stuff really matters all that much. It's what you do between now and then. The great Pete Susans probably still says it, but I remember him always saying that from a hockey standpoint, you play 22 games that don't really matter. The real season starts when the playoffs start. So that's kind of it for some of these two. And I think the crossovers are intriguing, kind of sets things up for later in the year.
Great Northern Conference. And last week we had an opportunity to talk to Coach Dewey Riley of the Tomahawk Hatchets. Had a chance to talk to him about the game against Wausau East. And they did it again. Another very impressive win 2 weeks ago at home in overtime against Wittenberg-Burnham. And last week, one of the oddest scores you'll see, 11-10. And because it's not really odd in terms of 11-10, it's odd how you got to 11. Usually maybe a field goal, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. But nope, Tomahawk had a touchdown, an extra point, and 2 safeties, including a game-winning safety in the third quarter. For Tomahawk, Max Larson, 18 rushes, 138 yards. Rex Riley, 12 tackles. Cash Ryan Seafeld had a touchdown run for East. Gio Gomez field goal in the second quarter gave East a 10-9 lead at halftime. The only second-half score was that safety in the third quarter that gave Tomahawk the lead, the second safety allowed by the Jacks in the game. A late fourth-quarter attempt by East was blocked, giving Tomahawk the win. And that's when you think about it in the big picture, 7 games in conference. 1 out of 7 is, what is that? Whatever the percentage is. Yeah. But it's a big chunk of the season. And a game like this, boy, 1-0 for Tomahawk, 0-1 for East.
Yeah, you talk. This is the stuff that old school football coaches dream of, right? I mean, you preach special teams, you preach line play. You preach good defense. You preach being able to run the football. And this, I mean, when you're Tomahawk and you walk out of this game and you've checked all those boxes, right? Yeah. I mean, to get 2 safeties, you have to have really good line play. We can go 10 seasons without seeing a safety, and there was 1 in each half of this game. And then I think the blocked field goal at the end, when you talk special, I mean, just all really big things and that are all little things, right, yeah, that you spend time on in that 2 weeks leading up to your first game, and you don't have as much time to work on once you get into the weekly routine. So, I mean, great win for Tomahawk and East. Those are the kind of games it seemed like they were in all year last year and found a way to win. So it'll be interesting to see how they rebound from this coming up this week.
Another tight GNC Week 1 matchup last week saw Mosinee at home outfight Merrill 21-14. So Mosinee 2-1, Merrill 1-2. Overall, Treve Stoffel again filled up the stat sheet, 12 of 19, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns passing, 12 rushes, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, 10 tackles, and then add a little on top of the cake, a little icing with an interception as well. Caden Yankee had a big night for Merrill, 19 rushes, 124 yards for the Jays. Noah Klug had 7.5 tackles, but I have to say, if you're Merrill, to go to Mosinee, that's been a tough place for Merrill to go since they've been playing in that conference. And to give themselves an opportunity to win the football game is something that Merrill can hang their head on. And for Mosinee, it's a win. And that's, again, that's the bottom line. Got the W.
I think when we talked about this conference last week, and it appears nothing has changed in that when we go through 3 weeks, is every conference win is going to loom large in this because we'll talk about Medford in a second, but they don't seem to be running away with it like they did last year. So I think that these types of matchups, and you're right, I think everybody would have probably predicted that Mosinee was going to run away with this one. But the fact that Merrill was able to keep it that close and rush for 124 yards on 19 rushes, I think Coach has a good game plan and can feel good coming out of this game. Obviously, moral victories, right? That doesn't get you into the playoffs, but knowing week 1 was tough for them, and even the Crandon game, week 2, they maybe didn't dominate as how some people thought they might. So I think this was a good week 3 matchup and a good outcome. And probably the best thing in this conference, if you are those teams in the middle trying to get to the top third, it always feels better, probably historically, when Medford and Mosinee are in your rearview mirror. And they now have
right.
one of them in their rearview mirror. So
Another game that was very entertaining. It was really an up-and-down game, a game that Rhinelander led 32-29, but then Lakeland got the final 2 scores of the game, and Lakeland stays undefeated, beating Rhinelander on the Hodags home field 43-32. Declan McQuaid was 15 of 25, 189 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions, added 49 yards on the ground for the T-Birds. Evan Zock had a huge night, had 8 catches, 123 yards and a touchdown, and he also had a big defensive play. He stripped a Rhinelander player, recovered it, and then returned it 35 yards for a touchdown. So his big night was very big for Lakeland. Abe Gretzinger was 14 of 23, 220 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Hodags. Rowan Whitecheck, 7 catches, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.5 tackles as well. But that Lakeland team really off to a flying start.
yeah, they seem to be consistently putting things together. Been a long time since they've started a season 3-0. This is a great match, or a good rivalry matchup game in that conference. So I think Lakeland feels really good about being 3-0, and I think Rhinelander scoring 32 points and having a second half lead probably gives them some confidence and creates a very interesting matchup this week, which we'll talk about later, between them and the Lumberjacks.
Yep. And then Medford got some frustration out after a couple of tough games to start off their campaign. They went to Schofield Stadium and knocked off Anago 51-18. Anago enjoyed their game a week before that, but they came back to earth as maybe the rumors of Medford's demise may have been slightly exaggerated.
I would think so, yeah. Not knowing all the stats from this one too, but Medford has a formula and probably struggled, right? Again, they're in their week 1 and 2 opponents, which are very tough in that Mississippi Valley down there opponents. But I think in this conference, they probably still consider themselves the returning conference champions. And until somebody proves them otherwise, they are.
Then the CWC Large, and again, some interesting results in that conference. And Loyal Greenwood knocked off Marathon 26-20. And I think when all is said and done this season, may look back at that game as maybe the difference between a playoff berth and not a playoff berth for either of these teams.
Yeah.
Marathon had the lead going to the 4th quarter, but a couple of Loyal Greenwood touchdowns in the 4th allowed them to win. True Thurs was 12 of 23 for 139 yards and a touchdown for the Raiders. Added 13 rushes, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Garrett Bracewell, 6 catches, 82 yards and a score. Landon Hilgart, 12 tackles. But Loyal Greenwood now 3-0 overall. Raiders, 2 tough losses in a row. They had the chance to win against Auburndale last week and now against Loyal Greenwood this week, and they're 1-2.
And I think we like what we've seen out of Marathon. I'm thinking they're definitely on the right track and doing some good things, and I don't think that's changed. I think what maybe has changed coming out of this game is how we look at Loyal Greenwood. Being 3-0, a couple of those games early, we thought maybe their opponents were really down this year and not so much, but who knows with that co-op like that, who knows who they got or what. Whatever, like as far as how that team is put together and whatnot. So, maybe Loyal Greenwood's kind of a team to look out for moving forward the next 6 weeks.
They had that impressive week 1 win, a surprise in our minds against Abbey. And then, of course, Abbey's won the last 2 weeks. So it looks as though Loyal could be a team that really does make a little noise in that conference. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood over Wyowega Fremont 34-7. Caden Yeager, 7 rushes, 183 yards and 3 touchdowns. Bo Davis, 8 of 9 passing, 73 yards. Eddie Nowinski, 5.5 tackles. And they really put the clamps on Carter Bertishaw, the Wyowega Fremont quarterback, only 8 of 26, 66 yards and a touchdown. I saw on Friday night in the recaps, once they called this an upset. This is not an upset.
No. Oh, I don't think so at all. But I think you kind of said maybe when we were talking about Medford, maybe some people are calling for their early demise. I think maybe Wittenberg was nobody called for their demise, but I know there were some question marks, and they
quarterback
had a tough
injury,
week 1 game or a week 2 game,
yeah,
actually.
against Tom Allen.
Yeah, and so I think this was kind of their get-right week as well.
Stratford beat Spencer Columbus 27-15. The game was tied at halftime, but then Stratford pulled away for the win, getting on the winning track. Holy cow, they must have been really thirsty for a win. They're not used to losing games at Stratford. Brady Berg, 12 of 16, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Connetter, 15 rushes, 89 yards and a score. Colton Bright, 4 catches, 74 yards and a touchdown. But, I mean, it's halftime. It's tied. You're Stratford. You haven't won yet, and you're in week 3. That must have been that's a weird feeling, I imagine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, not only were they 0-2, which they're not used to, they were tied at halftime with Spencer Columbus, certainly not used to that as well. So, obviously, a good win for new coach, his first career win there with the Tigers. So, I think that maybe that settles some nerves down, right? Maybe they need that win. I'm sure those kids were getting asked a lot of questions. Coaches are getting asked a lot of questions at a community like that. So maybe this settles them down and kind of gets them heading in the right direction. Certainly leaves some big question marks as we move through these matchups in the next few weeks.
And when they go to Whitburn this week, we'll talk about later on. And Amherst just hanging out there. 3-0 now overall, 1-0, and they went to Colby and they dominated 38-8. And slow down the Colby run game as Luke Hanula had 50 yards on 16 carries. But Amherst has been not just winning, but winning very impressively.
Yeah, I think quietly maybe established, kind of like we've talked earlier in the Wisconsin Valley Conference with Spash. I think is Amherst ready to say, if Stratford's going to take a step back, we're going to take 2 steps forward and kind of bring back to where we were. So it'll be interesting to see those matchups with Wittenberg, Burnhamwood, with Stratford as we move through these. But early season or through 3 weeks, it looks like Amherst might be ready to reclaim their spot at the top.
Speaking of keeping on top, Merrillwood CWC, Edgar shuts down Auburndale 27-0. Big one, of course, in that conference. Edgar 3-0, Auburndale 2-1. Tucker Strite 6 of 12, 126 through the air with 2 touchdowns. Gavin Bauer 11 rushes, 49 yards to lead the way on the ground. Not huge numbers for Edgar, but they had a number of different players provide some support. 267 yards of total offense for Edgar. Alex Schneider had 8 tackles, but the big number is the 0 that their defense allowed.
Yeah, if you ask Coach Sins ahead of the season, if you go through back-to-back weeks against Stratford and Auburndale and give up 0 points, I think he's pretty pleased with that output.
And we're going to go to the third game because then we'll go back to the second game because we have a guest coming up in a moment. So we'll lead right into it. So the third game in that league was Assumption beating Pacelli 26-12. Both teams now 1-2. It was a 13-12 game going into the fourth before Assumption pulled away. Wiley Cornwell for the Royals had 19 rushes, 102 yards, 9 tackles, and 2 sacks. Jake Williams of Pacelli was 8 of 15, 127 yards, 2 scores. Bryce Flaker, 14 rushes, 69 yards. Big win for Assumption. Pacelli had won the previous week in non-conference, and for Assumption to get that first win, huge. And again, as you try to find that way towards 3 conference wins, and there's going to be one because there is a forfeit in that league this year, huge game.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about it last week, the significance of that game with these opponents when you look at the matchups ahead of them. This is probably stating it a little too strongly, but this was kind of an early season Super Bowl for those two. So great job for Assumption and tough one for Pacelli.
And then it was Abbotsford over Iola Scandinavia, 39-0. Falcons 2-1 overall. T-Birds now 1-2. Erwin Aguilera, 13 rushes, 128 yards, and a couple of scores. Jesus Reyes, 11 rushes, 110 yards, 2 more touchdowns. Jason Pleckelman had 9 rushes, 102 yards, and a touchdown. We've seen this before. 3 100-yard rushers for the Falcons. They had 55 carries, 480 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But the thing that probably jumps out as much is they were able to shut down the Thunderbird offense to just 88 yards. So old-fashioned Abbotsford formula for wins, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to talk to Coach in a little bit and kind of talk about where they've been already this year. Kind of a early season game. We probably thought that they would have won, and then the way they won this game was probably a little eye-opening as well.
In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to bring him in right now. We're not even going to take a break. We're going to bring him in because I know that he's got another event coming up a little bit later on this evening. But Coach Jake Knapmiller, are you there, Coach?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, guys.
Hey, terrific to have you back on the show. Really appreciate it. And I guess we'll jump in. We just talked about your game last week. Before we delve into your team a little bit, let's talk about that game. Iola Scandinavia, always a very good program in that conference, and able to knock them off 39-0. What were the keys for your team last week?
I think after our first couple weeks, we were doing a little shuffling. We had a major injury in week one with Christian Fuentes going down, who was our quarterback at the time. And so we were kind of shuffling and not really in a rhythm the first 2 weeks. And our challenge was, all right, we got through the bumps and let's settle in and worry about us and not worry about who's on the other side, and let's get better at football. And against them, they obviously had probably maybe their top three players that were returning out, and so they had some young and inexperienced guys that were playing as well, which is a challenge. But I thought our kids came out and didn't worry about those things and played the brand of football that we've seen here in Abbotsford, and it's been a little bit since we've seen it. So I was excited to see our kids come out and play kind of a smash mouth style that we used to play.
Yeah, Coach, it's been interesting weeks 1 and 2 as Chad and I go through the highlights each week and talk about it. One of the things that popped out to me right away was not seeing Christian Fuentes' name in those stat sheets when they come out or whatever. And then for you to hear you say he was playing quarterback as well. Who has kind of stepped up in that role? And I guess first off, how's Christian doing? Will he be able to be back this year? Or?
Christian's he's got a career-ending surgery here, and that kind of he's our leader, and that deflated us as a group, and rightfully so.
Yep.
He was an off-season leader, and when your guy goes down, I think in any sport, it takes you a little bit to regroup, and our guys spent a period maybe feeling sorry for ourselves, and we got over it. But we won't see him. The guys that are replacing him, Urban Aguilera was our starting quarterback for 2 years now. The reason why he wasn't playing quarterback was our starting tight end had grade issues and was out for the first 3 games. So Irvin, being our next best experienced option, stepped into the tight end role, which you don't see a lot of quarterbacks have the ability to do.
Right.
So he's taken some quarterback and running back reps, and Carter Sealara Jr. has been stepping in and taking quarterback reps as well.
I want to ask you again before we kind of delve even deeper with your team. We were talking about Loyal Greenwood, and you played them in week 1. And coming into the season, you think at Abbotsford would be, the way you've been able to perform the last few years. How good is that team? Because they've been a little bit of a surprise so far this season. Now 3-0. How good is Loyal Greenwood?
Oh man, they're so big. They have some major size, and I don't know if I recall a team. It's been a long time since we've played a team that's been that big up front and had big physical backs behind them, and they run a style that matches what their skill set is. And we gave them the ball on our end 3 times. As I mentioned, we were shuffling our backfield around a little bit post Christian injury, and so they got a short field, and they're really good in a short field situation where they can just pound you. And so we didn't really get to see offensively how if they're diverse or anything, because they didn't have to at that point. Defensively, they're just sound and they're tough, and they make you work, and they created 3 turnovers against us. So obviously they're 3-0, so they're doing things right, and I think they have taken some major steps as a program from last year.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that, noticed it. When you end a season like you guys did last year, and you had a really nice end of your season, nice postseason, you kind of have a list of things you want to work on to get better for next year, both X's and O's, obviously the weight room, and then that character off the field stuff. So talk a little bit about that, but then also talk about when you have a rough week 1, week 2, and you have those injuries, and you have to do quick, like you said, we had to get back to doing what we do and play our style of football and play tough. What did you do in the off season to prepare yourself to take that next step forward? And then what did you do in that 1 week when you had to regroup on the move?
Yeah, yeah, great questions. Our big message was in our game that we lost, we missed we had a opportunity to win with a field goal at the end of the game, and that wasn't by the only play that decided the game, but we false started, which was our eighth false start of the game, and that, in my opinion, was the difference maker in a football game between two really good teams, and we talked about the idea of consistency in our lives and the idea of consistency in our workouts, and not I'm going to do it when I feel like it, or whatever. That all carries over to the playing field, and so our upperclassmen especially. I don't think our underclassmen did a great job with that, but they also didn't get to feel the same thing that our upperclassmen did with that loss. So I think consistency was the piece going into the season, and our upperclassmen have done a really nice job of pushing that down to the younger guys, and not only leading by example, but demanding it out of them too. And I think the leadership is as strong as it has been here from that aspect.
One of the things that was most interesting when we talked last season was you talked about how so many of the players on your team have not been playing since they were, barely able to walk. That learning football, learning a lot, even watching football together on the weekends. Does maybe that be part of these situations where maybe in a deep playoff run, or in a pressure situation, that they have to learn a little bit, don't they? I mean, maybe they learn it a little bit later and quicker than maybe some of the other teams that have had maybe that from the time you can walk, you're going to be playing some football.
Yeah, we were reflecting on that again today, this year. We have 41 kids out this year, which is 12 more than last year. So the kids want to be a part of something, and I don't even know if they know what they want to be a part of. They just want to be a part of something. And I
Mm.
love that this is the positive thing that they can be a part of in our school, because there's other things that they could be doing that aren't so positive. And um, it the it's crazy to think. So being a kid growing up and having parents that watch football and a dad that's played football, you think about how many kids on our 40-man roster come from those situations, and I would bet it's less than five. And that, I think, is an anomaly in rural northern Wisconsin. I think that number is maybe low, but not even close to that number. And so, yeah, I think when you try to teach kids a game with 22 positions on the field and all these scenarios and situations that you put them in, when a big moment comes, you have to trust your training, and their training is pretty limited compared to some of the kids we go against. And it's not an excuse; it's just what it is.
I think what that speaks to me when I hear you say that, for like kind of a little bit last year and building on that this year, I think to me what that speaks to is when push comes to shove, then you're relying a lot more on your culture than you are on maybe their X's and O's and their football knowledge. So that tells me that you guys are doing some pretty awesome things with your culture. So that, congratulations on that. My next question is, when I look at the fact that you guys are a field goal away from being 3-0, and last week you put up 55 rushes for 480 yards and 6 touchdowns, we're going to say the names Erwin Aguilera and Jesus Reyes and Jason Plockelman. Is that how you say that?
Jackson Pluckelman.
Okay, Jackson Pluckelman. All right, so obviously we know those guys, and we're going to say their names and talk about all their great stats. But in order to do that, you must have some pretty nice-looking guys up front, or guys who are competing hard in your line. Can you talk about those guys a little bit?
Hey, I appreciate you bringing them up because I'm the line coach, and we don't get those guys don't get enough love. So, our line is straight across the board, tight end to tight end, run blocks. We're 1 for 7 throwing the ball this year, so it's not a secret that those guys are doing the dirty work. Our guys on the edge so far, Irvin Aguilera, I said, was a tight end, and he played both last game. But our other tight end is Luis Lujan Gonzalez, who's a first-year starter, junior for us, and done a really nice job learning the game of football and being a nice edge setter for us. We do have two seniors and a junior up front. Marcus Van Leuven and Angel Zinzun are both big, strong dudes that have played quite a few football games for us. Our junior is Julian Aguilera, who started our level 2 game at center due to an injury. So he has that experience as well. And then we bring three really, really tough, physical, hungry sophomores, Landon Auberg, Josue Zinzun, and Isaac Sundermeyer. And Isaac's really pushing for a starting role up there. They all three are kind of wrestler type guys, and they play with great pad level and physicality. And we have them in positions where they can move in space, and they've really excelled. And last week they sure took a jump. So that was exciting to see as young guys.
Again, we're talking to Abbotsford High School head football coach Jake Knapmiller here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. I want to kind of circle back to something you just said in my last question about the numbers going up double digits. I mean, for folks like us that love high school football, and you see so often where the numbers can be a challenge for a lot of schools, to see a double-digit number increase at a school your size is incredibly impressive. You said that kids want to be part of something, and they're finding something positive with your group, but at the same time, there's got to be even more in terms of you, your coaches, the school community, because we don't see that very often these days, and it's really it caught my ears. I would like to know a little bit more about what's in the secret sauce for you guys, because right now that is something we just don't see a whole lot of.
Sure, yeah. I think there's two things. I think part of it is our kids sell the program themselves. They're excited to be a part of it. You don't hear them saying in a negative way, "We have practice tonight." It's something they look forward to as part of their day. And culture breeds culture, and the kids have set that positive culture of being together. I don't think we have any underclassmen that feel like they're undervalued compared to the older guys. And that's a really powerful way to keep kids in your program when they feel that value and see those guys as not equals, but teammates and guys that take pride in their role on the team and what they can provide to the older guys and vice versa. So I think that's part of it. I also think Garrett Rouse, my D coordinator, and he's our head basketball coach. Brett Nelson is our head baseball coach, and him and I did a summer fitness class together. And there's so much cohesion between our programs right now. I'm also the head track coach, so we have all the main sports covered for our guys in our school. Between us four, all being on the same page and expecting the same things, and kind of bringing that same mentality to all of our sports. I think that is part of our success rate too. I think you have to point to that as well.
Coach, I know a lot of times in programs your size, even with the increased numbers this year, you probably have a lot of guys going both ways. In addition to doing some great things offensively, you guys also pitched a shutout against Iowa Scandinavia. What feels good about what your defense is doing right now?
Yeah, Coach Rao would be mad at me if I didn't talk about the defense. Yeah, so Coach Rao is a backstory on him. He played quarterback for us one of my first years coaching 14 years ago, and he went to college, came back, and this is his third year as D coordinator and science teacher and head basketball and all those things. It is also the third year of our kids learning a new system, and I think sometimes it takes a few years to feel comfortable, especially with our kids' background in football. You're learning a brand new way to do things, and so I think we're starting to hit. The kids are starting to trust it and believe in the things that they're learning, and I hope that week 3 was just a start of that confidence defensively.
Let me ask you about week 2, though, because I love the games where you don't have to go very far. and when you play Colby, you don't have to go very far, or they don't have to come very far to see you. Coming off the first week where, you lose a leader and you lose a football game, I imagine that having a rival and then getting a big W was a great tonic for your group.
Yeah, we didn't. We definitely did not play well. But at the same time, sometimes it doesn't matter if you can sneak out that W when things aren't ideal. Our defense definitely picked us up there. We fumbled twice and gave it away on both of them, but our defense caused, I think, 4 turnovers as well. We had an interception by Irvin Aguilera, and then 3 fumbles recovered on our end. One being really late as Kobe had a chance to tie the game up inside of our 20. So we made plays at the right time. Our kids, again, being young, they had the jitters yet. Our sophomore group, our new guys that were filling in, were just kind of getting used to the speed and the expectations of being what they're being asked to do. So, um, yeah, I think we're fortunate to come out of that one with the shuffle and then going into Iola and gaining some confidence this week.
Coach, just following up on that one real quick, because Chad touched on that being your closest opponent in a rivalry. Is that a pretty healthy rivalry? Like, do the kids know each other pretty well from those two schools, and is there a little extra when you play Colby?
Yeah, good question. We co-op in wrestling and baseball with them, and so there's some knowledge. Yeah, and I think for the most part, it's a likable rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
I tell the kids it really wasn't a rivalry until last year when we actually won a football game against them, because they just whooped our butts for years and years. The first few years we played them, and for a lot of years we didn't play them. They were apparently too close to have a football game against. We drove by Kobe many games, but no, I think it's good. I Our kids really don't get into too much of the like. There's a can that we play for and that sort of thing, and that's exciting to celebrate after the game. But I don't think that's why they play the game or why they're excited to play. But like you guys said, they know some of the guys and they played Cuda football, the young kid football, with some of those kids as teammates, and now they're playing against them. So.
Let's talk about your league because it's always a very competitive league. You start off with the powerhouse that is Edgar. Then Auburndale's been really good. Iola's been good. You've been good. And Assumption Pacelli over the years have had really good football teams as well. It's a really solid league, isn't it? And Pittsville, of course, is in there too.
Yeah, I think the couple teams last year that had gone to 8 man, I think it was fitting that they were low in numbers and it was a good fit for their program. But man, if you want to get better and ready for playoffs and say that you're ready to play the best teams in the state, this is the league to do it. And even in Iola, the guys that they put on the field when they're at their best, and they weren't this last week. They didn't have those guys, but they had 2 D1 high level kids, one of the fastest kids in the state, and man, talk about an opportunity for your kids to be able to play against those guys and get better for whatever the future might lie, the playoffs or whatever. But yeah, Edgar being a perennial powerhouse in Auburndale, I think has been one of the most consistent, successful programs that we've been around here for a few years too. And um, that it just you look forward to those games because you want to see how your kids rise to the occasion and play against good competition.
Anything else, Coach? Or should we ask about this week's game maybe before we wrap it up?
Yeah, you ask about that. I'll wrap it up when you're all done.
Okay, and you do have Pacelli at home this week, and Pacelli played. It was a tight one against Assumption before they pulled away. What have you seen from Pacelli? What does your team have to do well besides everything in order to be successful coming up on Friday night?
Yeah, I think when we talk about it, it's again, you have to be prepared for the other team, but you have to just trust in what you're doing and believe in your practice and your training and things like that. They looked kind of beat up too. It's hard to tell who's going to be healthy. They have 4 or 5 kids, it looks like, on the sideline that are on crutches or are not in uniform, and only a few kids suited other than the 11 on the field. So, um, again, kind of like Iola, you don't know what team you're going to face and what personnel's on the field. And I don't know if that's going to change a lot for them. They kind of have a mixed bag offense, and defensively they run some different things against us than they did against the other teams traditionally. So you just prepare to follow your rules, your guidelines as whatever position you're coaching and teaching, and just play fast.
Probably safe to say you guys see some pretty full and heavy boxes with your 7 passing attempts on the year, I would say, huh, Coach?
We're prepared for that. Yes, absolutely.
Hey, my last 2 things is, well, obviously good luck this week and moving forward, but I just wanted to say how impressed I am each year when you've been on and the things you say about your program and what you're doing with those student athletes over there and teaching them. I'm sure, obviously, when it looks like what you're doing with your culture, but also what you're teaching these kids about life. So I love that. That's one of my favorite things about high school sports and high school football is turning these student athletes into young men. It sounds like you're doing a great job. So keep up the great work and can't wait to see how you guys do move forward.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. Coach Jake Knapmiller of the Abbotsford Falcons. Again, great to have him on the program here tonight. Coming up, we're going to look at the 8-man action from last week, and then, of course, our student-athlete guest coming up as we will be talking to Shay Jones from Wausau West coming up at the start of the next hour. It is the Big High School Sports Show here on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, it's a Wisconsin Valley Conference football showdown as Wausau West makes the short trip to DC Everest. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Wausau West football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Sun Printing, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Wisconsin Valley Flag Football, Featherstone Cabinetry, the Wausau West Gridiron Club, and K5 Construction. It's Wausau West at DC Everest in high school football. Friday night, starting with the pregame show at 6:35, opening kickoff at 7 p.m. on your radio home for high school sports, 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Along with Jason Foster, I am Chad Holmes. Coming up at the top of the hour, after the news update at the top of the hour, we like it when they get here early. I tell you, Shay Jones from Wausau West is in the studio. He'll be joining us at about 7:06. Before we talk a little bit about the 8-player results from last week, Coach, what Coach Knapmiller has done at Abbotsford is something that's beyond the wins, and obviously they've won a lot of games in recent years, but the numbers, when you hear that they're getting more kids out, they're getting more kids involved, they're getting better, I would say, experiences because the kids want to be part of it. That's the thing that kind of jumps out to me.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? We're seeing significantly more teams go from 11-man to 8-man. We talked a little bit off the air about some teams going from 8-man to no-man football or not having a program anymore, which is a tough situation. So when you look at not only do they have a team, a level 2 playoff team from last year, but you add 12 I think you made a great point. You add 12 players to it from one year to the next in a school that size. I mean, so when you take your program from 29 to 41, that makes a huge difference with how you practice. It makes a huge difference in what the weight room looks like. But more importantly, it kind of I love what he said, that it's not just, hey, we won games so everyone wants to play football because that's a cool thing to do in Abbotsford. It's these kids want to be part of something good. Right. Yeah. And maybe they don't even know enough about football to know that what they want to be part of is football. They want to be part of something good. And it really sounds like Coach Knapmiller and his staff is doing a great job of creating something good. And how cool is it that the head basketball coach and the head wrestling coach, and he's the head track coach. So all these coaches from these other sports are there together, providing not only not only quality coaching that's turned them into a good football team and winning games and putting themselves in a good situation for the postseason, but it truly is probably making a huge impact on the lives of these student athletes and these young men, and going to pay huge dividends for them in life after high school.
Absolutely. 8-player, Central Wisconsin 8. A game that we had last week on 98.9 WXCO is a battle. Newman Catholic went to Alman Bancroft, and Alman Bancroft beat the Cards by a score of 20-13. Both teams are now 2-1 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Big guy. Emmett Stiles for Alman Bancroft, 39 rushes, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cards got an interception return for a touchdown from Cooper Gould. Cardinals were banged up a bit, but they fought, and I watched the game on Huddle, and they had a number of injuries, and you'd know it. We have two-way players. It's not just one injury. It's two injuries, and they lost a couple of players during the course of that game, and they kept fighting. They had a chance to the end, but in the end, it's just been a bit of a thorn in the side, Alman. It's the third straight year that Alman has defeated the Cardinals, but Cardinals are going to be fine.
Yep, for sure. And you watch the Badgers play last Saturday. How important is their center, right?
Yeah,
I mean, how many of those snaps went Kitty Wampus? So, I mean, that's one of the players that Newman lost, right? Or for part of it was the guy who snaps football.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the offense starts, right there. And if that timing is off or you're struggling there, that's a tough hill to climb. I do not know the extent of his injury, how long he'll be out.
4 weeks, I think.
4 weeks. Okay, so he'll be back. So they got that going for you. But yeah, that was a tough one for me to see Friday night when I watched the scores, because after having Quincy on last week, what an outstanding young man, and I could just sense how bad they wanted to beat them.
Exactly.
Alman Bancroft last week. So that was a tough one for me. I felt bad for those guys.
Talking about feeling bad.
Ooh, yeah.
Tri-County 94, Menominee Nation nothing. And you mentioned, and I mentioned to you that this week it was announced Menominee Nation is not going to finish the season, which is a shame for everybody, especially for the kids who don't get the opportunity. And again, it's easy to make comments. I have not seen the game, but I will say, man, you hate to see 94 points put up. And again, circumstances, I don't have the exact details, but at the same time, you just wish that, because you don't want to embarrass your opponents either.
Correct. And I obviously I'll be on the same page as you. I'm not going to pile on or whatever, but having coached for over 20 years, I do think there are ways in a football game to not score 94 points regardless of the scenario. So maybe if Coach was here, he'd say something different or have some reasons for it. But that's tough, especially when the outcome, and who knows with Menominee Nation too. Maybe they were right on the cusp with numbers. Maybe they got a couple injuries. Maybe it isn't. Whatever. I hate saying maybe it's not safe to play, but with numbers and that sort of thing, it's tough. But to not only not be able to play this week, but to cancel your whole season. On the flip side of that impacts their next 6 opponents, right?
Yeah.
Like there are now 6 games. When we talk about, I mean, at least the 8-man teams are 9 games this year.
8.
So they're at 8 games.
They just started a week early because they have a week of extra playoffs.
And the same. There we go.
Well, I know Newman's looking for a game now.
Well, that's what I mean.
They have
so
this brand new
you
place
have
to
8
play.
games, you lose one of them off the bat. So it's horrible for Menominee Nation, but it also impacts 5 more opponents coming, because they have 3 in. Yeah. So 5 more teams are now looking, and finding a game at this juncture is nearly impossible.
Looking under every rock.
Yes.
I think that's what Newman is. I think some of the teams to watch in 8-player, Gilman, I think, is right now thought of as perhaps the number 1 team at this point, which means nothing, of course, but they had another big win, 48-12 over Frederick. McDonald is another team that's expected to be among the top teams. They knocked off Lake Holcomb 55-0. Defending state champ Owen Withey, after being whooped by Gilman in week 1, has bounced back well the last 2 weeks. They beat Cornell 50-0 last week. Athens lost for the first time. They lost to Flambeau 48-12. Athens now 2-1 on the season as well. So again, a lot of action going on. We'll talk about the schedule for this coming week as part of our second hour of the show. But coming up after our news update here in just a few moments, we'll have our student athlete guest for this week from Wausau West, senior Shay Jones. So that's coming up. Hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show here on 98.9 WXCO. Buttons. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Also on YouTube.com at the 98.9 WXCO channel as well. With former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and this week we make it a Wausau West double here as our student-athlete guest from Wausau West, senior Shay Jones. And Shay, thank you for coming on over.
Thanks for having me.
And get you a little bit closer to that microphone. Make sure everybody can hear you really good. But really great to have you on board, multi-sport athlete for the Warriors. Before we talk a little bit about your football and your hockey and everything else, it is Everest week. And going into Steam Stadium on Friday night, what does it mean to you and your teammates when you face off with Everest over there?
I think this is a big week for us. Obviously, losing to them last year was kind of like a big circle on the schedule this year, and I think it's getting a lot of the guys on the team excited and fired up.
So, being a senior this year and having a really nice start to your year, both team being 2-1 and you having a really nice start, what has been your focus? Because I know you're one of the captains, one of the leaders on the team. What was your focus this offseason and as we've gone into the beginning of the season to take that step from where you guys ended last season to where you want to be this season?
I think it was to get everyone on board and like everyone in the weight room all summer and everyone at 7-on-7 and just like hanging out and building chemistry and getting ready for the season.
How important is the weight training? Because that's something that I think a lot of folks who may come out on a Friday night, may not be around the team all the time, may not have a kid on the team. I've noticed over the last number of years, and I think going back to your last few years as coach, Jason, that was a big focus to get the team back to where you thought it should be, and that was a big factor in some really good seasons for Wausau West. For yourself, how much importance is there? Do you see the kids that are in the weight room during the off season, their strides forward compared to maybe some that aren't there quite as much?
Yeah, you can definitely tell, like, when you're going to block someone and they're not football strong compared to, like, weight room strong, you can definitely tell. So it's pretty important to be in the weight room all summer.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier, so in the beginning of the show, we kind of recap last week's games. And when Chad mentioned you were being on the show and you had the 2 touchdowns this last week, one of the biggest differences I've seen in your game, so when Coach Nowinski was there last year, Coach Mills this year, one of the things they talk about is how you are one of the best blockers on the team, right? When we talk O-line, oftentimes people don't think about tight ends, but in Coach Johnson's offense, tight ends play a huge role in blocking. If you can't, doesn't matter how good you are at catching and running, if you can't block, you're probably not going to play tight end for the Warriors. So tell me 2 things. One is, what have you done or what makes you such an effective blocker? And then number 2, the other thing I've really noticed this year is what you do when the football's in your hands. I feel like you've been better after the catch this year, like taking hits, driving your feet, finishing runs. Tell me about your blocking, and then tell me a little bit about what you've seen as the growth in your game as a receiver.
I think hockey definitely helps with the balance and like bringing the block to them and not letting them come to you and trying to go from there. And then receiving the ball, I think after the catch, I worked with Tegan Rasmus's dad and him this summer, and I think he helped me a lot making like just moves after the catch, and obviously going to college camps and stuff. It's been nice to get some knowledge from high-level coaches. So.
Along the same lines, talking about the catching ability, number one, it does seem as though you have more confidence in your hands. It just feels like, boy, you get your hands on it, it's going to be there. And also, you kind of mentioned the physicality of hockey helping you with the blocking. I thought on the second touchdown catch to the left-hand side from where I'm looking at it, where you used your body very well against the defender. How much of because using the body as a defenseman in hockey is so vitally important in terms of angles, in terms of trying to use your body as an additional defender in a sense. It looked like you used a little bit of that in one of those catches last week. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Talk a little bit about that play, because I found it incredibly interesting because you seem to know exactly where the defender was. Could you maybe talk through that play and maybe what was going through your mind on that play?
Yeah, so we ran the play, and the guy was camping over me, and I saw him, so I tried to cut him off and go to the left a little bit, and he followed, and I saw him in my side view, and I saw he was going to come for the pick, and I kind of use my body to get in front of it and catch the ball. So,
real quickly, Jason, one more question about that play and just generally. You mentioned Tegan working in the off season with him and his dad. Your quarterback is also one of your defense partners on the ice during the season in Joe Gravine. It looked like he had a lot of trust in you on that play because there was not a lot of room. That was a pretty small window. Does having that trust factor, both on the ice and on the field, help you with your quarterback?
Yeah, I think me and Joe spend most of our time with each other. So I think that helps with the trust and him throwing the ball to me and on the contested throws for sure. So
Yeah, Chad, you kind of stole that one from me a little bit, but no, I'm gonna ask a follow up because you didn't go quite as far as I'm gonna with it. The other thing I know, as I see you and Joe together all the time at school, I see you and Joe as partners on the ice, all of that stuff. But I also know that as close as you and Joe are, sometimes that closeness is almost like being brothers, and sometimes brothers don't always get along as well as they should. Is that part of the relationship too? Like in game, are you willing to tell Joe some things about how he's playing, and is Joe willing to kind of give it back to you a little bit? Do you guys kind of have a little bit of that give and take in their relationship as well?
yeah, I think we both get frustrated in the games and tell it to each other sometimes, but at the end of the day, we're chill and friends. So.
And that's ultimately what makes the relationship work, right? But I've kind of witnessed it firsthand, and I'll see something happen in a game, and I'm like, oh, Shay's going to say it's like if you were open and he threw it to somebody else and it's not a completion or whatever. I'm like, Joe's going to hear about it when Shay gets back to the huddle. It's kind of that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Cool.
When you look at the season so far, and it's hard to believe, and I hate using that term hard to believe because if we do it, you can say it all the time, but the fall season goes by so quickly. Sometimes the winter season seems like it's a lot longer. It is a lot more games, and it just goes over the holidays, and it just goes to almost spring. But football season seems like you kick it off in week 1, and before you look up, you're a third of the way through the season, and that's where you stand right now. 2-1, 1-0 in the conference. How do you feel about how the team has come together at this point, especially since practice started through the first 3 weeks? Has it been the kind of start to the season you expected? Has it been surprising in any way?
Yeah, I think it's been surprising. Obviously, losing 4 out of the 5 of our O-line, it was going to be like a surprise to us, and I think our line has come together and put a good fight on for most of our games, so I think that surprised me the most. But other than that, I had confidence throughout the whole season and that we were going to have a good season.
So we've talked a little bit about Joe and your relationship. Who are some of the other guys who, when you look at practice, maybe guys who don't show up in the stat sheet as much, like maybe the guys who aren't catching the passes, running the balls, throwing them. Who are some of the guys who day in and day out through practice in the locker room who really stand out on this team as being important, having important roles and being a big part of the success?
I think a lot of our O-linemen are like those guys because they're always bringing the intensity in practice and like using each other to build off of each other and create more energy. And then I also think like just like the scout guys, like they're all there to make us better and they're there to get better too when their time comes. And so I think probably mostly our O-line. So.
Again, we're talking to Shay Jones, Wausau West High School senior, our student-athlete guest this week on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. We talked about a couple of areas where you've taken pretty good strides this season. Where else do you think that you're still looking for strides as you get into the final 2/3 of this season personally? Any areas that you say, okay, I think I can get better in this area of my game?
Yeah, I think me separating myself from the defender on a pass, I could probably get better at that and maybe use a little bit more speed, get faster. I think that would be one of my biggest ones. So
Let's turn to hockey because I love hockey, and I know you love hockey, and I know you must love hockey as well. You made it to the state tournament last year. What did that experience mean to you as a high school athlete?
It was crazy. Obviously, we had to play some tough competition in our section, and we've always, all the way up through youth hockey, we've always had to play point, and they were the powerhouse of Wisconsin, and we always lost. And finally making it with one of the best teams we've had made it feel so fun. Like, it was an unreal experience.
And this has not always been the case at Wausau West. There's been some, but it feels like right now there's more hockey players playing football than maybe there has in the past. And not only playing, but playing really important roles. When you look for sure, you and Joe and Teagan really stands out on defense. Like, how do the two play? I mean, we've talked a little bit about the physicality and the blocking, but how do those two sports work together, and how does what you do well in football translate to the ice and vice versa?
I think football really stands out to be like more of a leader and like stay focused on the game, and football translates to, or hockey translates to football, like this what I said before. So
Looking at yourself as a defenseman, you're a big defenseman. You've been a big defenseman ever since I started seeing you on the ice at Wausau West. What is the mentality of a hockey defenseman? Because I've seen over the years that often it does start at the blue line in terms of maybe the attitude a team has. And you've had some really good defensemen that you've been around at Wausau West and the group that you've had the last couple of years. What is the mentality of a defenseman on the ice?
My mentality is to be the hardest hitting one out there, and obviously use my size to my advantage. So I think that'd be it.
Let me ask you a little quick question, because when you one of the things about hockey, it is such a fast game. It is a physical game, and you have to know what the line is. And if you give up too much to that line, then all of a sudden they're going to run through you. I've noticed that you and the other guys really have developed, that you're getting smarter about it, because you don't want to spend 2 minutes in the box. That doesn't help anybody. The mental aspect of the game is vitally important that maybe people don't think about as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, hockey's like a big mental game, even with your own teammates in practice, and it's even harder in the games too. So,
do you find that difference between football and hockey too? Because you're an emotional guy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it on the ice. I've seen a little bit in football. Is it harder to control those emotions in hockey because the game just keeps going? Like football, you go like crazy. They blow a whistle. You know, you got about at least 30 seconds before you do another one. In hockey, you might get whatever. You might smoke somebody or get smoked, and the game just keeps going, right? Unless the whistle's blowing and the penalty's called. So do you notice any differences between the two in that regard?
yeah, for sure, it's a big difference. The whistle kind of helps with going against.
Helps you
someone.
reset a little bit and
Yeah.
get dialed back in.
I know that Coach Johnson and the rest of the coaches would hate me to ask this now, but I'm going to look ahead, and I'm going to ask you for a moment to look ahead. What are the expectations when you get to the winter? Because with coming off a great year like you guys had, to get to the state tournament, having yourself and some other really talented players back, I imagine there has to be some excitement looking ahead to the winter.
Yeah, I think one of our big expectations is making it back to the state tournament and doing better than we did last year. And now having the experience, I think we have the chance to win it all. So
Outside of sports, what do you like to do?
I like to go hunting with my friends and spend time with my family and go fishing.
Do you have a favorite class in school?
Yeah, I like Microsoft Office probably this semester, but in the past it's been building trades. So
Any thoughts on what you want to do or what your plans are for after this year?
yeah, I think I'm gonna go to college. I'm talking to some schools for football, so we'll see where the season takes me and see where I end up. So
What do you want to do? Like, in addition to playing football, what are you thinking? What do you want to go to college for?
probably business, something in business.
It's always interesting to talk to the kids who are in the midst of that. What is it like when you get a call or a text or a message from somebody who says, hey, we're keeping an eye on you. We'd like you to consider coming to our school. We'd love to have you on our team. What's that whole experience like? Is there pressure on you? Is it difficult at times? Does it give you a spring in your step knowing that people are keeping an eye on you?
It for sure helps, but sometimes it gets a little nervous, and like you have to compete good in the game, otherwise you could lose that. And obviously it's nice to build a relationship with like somewhere you could go next, so I think it helps a lot.
And it's kind of a different process, right? Like in the summer you're on campus and at camps and doing stuff, so they actually get to see you heads up, and then once you get to the season, the communication changes quite a bit, and it comes more down to your huddle highlights and that sort of thing. So is there quite a bit of communication?
Yeah, some of the coaches I'm talking to right now, they text me daily, and I was just on a visit to Concordia St. Paul last weekend, so I think I still see them, but not as much during the summer, so I think it's nice to text them daily. And
is it difficult to balance your time? You have your sports, you have school, you have, you would want to have your family time and your friend time and a little time to kind of clear your head, I imagine, as well. Is it difficult to balance all that you have going on in your life right now?
Sometimes it's difficult, but I think the mod schedule at West really helps it with the homework, and if you're off for however long and you don't have any homework, that's your time to see your buddies, and then after school go to practice. And so I think it's hard, but West's schedule for sure helps.
Let's talk a little bit, and we don't have to get into the game, the X's and O's so much yet, but let's talk
if he wants to. I have no problem with that.
Let's talk about...
Coach may have a problem with that, but I don't have any problem with that.
Let's talk about Everest week. Like, is there... So last week you played Eau Claire North, just the second time they've been in our conference. Year 2 they will be moving forward, but not a huge rivalry or anything like that. What's the difference or the different feel from both the coaches, the team, practice, locker room this week, knowing you're playing DC Everest?
I think everyone's getting excited and pumped up, and everyone's come together, and we've had really good practices this week, and we've been playing music and going 100% in practice. So
knowing it's a close rivalry, and it is in other sports as well, hockey and wrestling and all the different things that everybody plays, any good-natured social media stuff going on out there, rivalry, anything? You don't have to know names or anything, but is there some extracurricular stuff going on out there that fires up the rivalry a little bit?
Yeah, there's for sure been some talking between our school and their school, but I think that also helps, and it also helps with every sport playing them this week, so it's all focused on one school.
Who is your favorite rival? It could be different for different sports. Who gets you going?
For hockey, it's for sure Spash because growing up, I've played like AAA with a lot of the kids on Spash, so it's like us versus them, and we're all friends. And then for football, it's probably Everest or Spash too, because most of those hockey guys. Not most of them, but some of them play football too, so it's kind of like that relationship. But Everest, like, we were never friends, so it's their true rivalry.
And in football, the road for the conference championship usually goes through Wausau West, Spash, or DC Everest in the last 5 to 7 years. So knowing those games, those matchups mean a lot.
Let me ask you. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What would it mean to beat Stevens Point on the ice this year? You got to state last year, but they were already gone, which was fine. We had no problem with that. But this year, again, going into this year, you got them twice in the regular season, and who knows, in the postseason as well. What would it mean they've been such a thorn in the side for everybody. I mean, last year they didn't lose a game until the playoffs, which was sad for them, I guess. But what would it mean to knock off the Panthers this year and maybe even win a Wisconsin Valley Conference championship?
I think it'd be like giving one last punch because we've always been on like a close game and losing, but I think this is our year to flip the sides. And
I'm terrible. I know, because you're the coach, and you're always being so careful about things. And I ask all the questions that shouldn't be asked, but doggone it, I wanted to ask you because those are always fun games. any game. I mean, I'm sure Friday night will be that way. I remember at Marathon Park last year when Stevens Point came into town, and then in the playoff games with Superior in New Richmond. Do you receive energy from the crowds? Does that change how you feel, how you perform on the field or on the ice?
Yeah, it for sure does. Like when you have your whole school behind your back and cheering for you on the sidelines, it's for sure like an addition to the hype on the on the ice. Like we usually play way better when we have fans there and the game is rowdy compared to when there's not much fans there and it's just family members. And
Tell me what it's like, since we've talked a lot about the football and the hockey together. It's given you the opportunity to be coached by a lot of different people. Like football is one of those sports that has, I mean, I think at Wausau West we have about 16 or 17 coaches from varsity down to the freshman football level. So you've been coached by a lot of different people, right? Coach Nowinski for 3 years. He's gone this year, Coach Mills, but Coach Johnson, you've had Coach Brandt and all the coaches on the hockey staff. This year, Coach Brown will be at the top. How has that helped you as an athlete to be coached by different people with different styles and to kind of prepare you not only to be a better athlete and to win games, but also to be a better young man?
I think building a relationship with them really helps, and they all bring like different points of views to the story, and the way they like coach you could be different from the other coach, but they're all trying to get the point across that's the same. So
anything else before our final question?
No, I think it's been really exciting watching you for 3 and just almost a third of a year now. So super best of luck this week against Everest. Can't wait to see how the rest of the football ends up, and then the rest of your senior year and when you make your decision about where it is you're heading after high school. So great job so far and good luck the rest of the year, Shay.
thank you.
And I got one final question, because we always ask our student athletes, especially the seniors, especially the multi-sport seniors, because you've had so much experience in so many different ways. But based on your experiences, what piece of advice would you give a freshman who's just starting their journey, whether in football or hockey or whatever it may be at Wausau West, based on what you've learned over the last 3+ years?
I think everything you do towards your sport matters, because you could be building a relationship with your friends that later on helps the team chemistry, or you could be lifting in the weight room and getting stronger for when it is your time to be a star on the field or rink. So
fantastic. Shay Jones, again, really appreciate you stopping on by. We'll look forward to seeing you on the field on Friday night over at Steam Stadium, and best of luck during the football season and the hockey season and the rest of your senior year.
thank you.
Shay Jones, again, our student athlete guest here this week on the Big High School Sports Show. We're going to take a quick timeout and come right back and look ahead to week number 4 of the high school football season here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
Are you passionate about local high school sports? So are we. WXCO 98.9 FM is proud to be the only station in Wausau bringing you live, play-by-play coverage of high school sports, game after game, season after season. But we can't do it alone. We are currently seeking local sponsors and community partners who believe in the power of sports to bring people together, inspire youth, and energize our hometown pride. Promote your business, support our local athletes, be heard by thousands of loyal local listeners. If your business is interested in supporting live sports broadcasts while gaining valuable exposure, now is the perfect time to become a WXCO sports sponsor. Message us on our Facebook page or call or text our sales rep, Aaliyah, at 608-573-1597. That's 608-573-1597. Let's keep Wausau High School sports on the air together.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jason Foster, I am Chad Holmes. And again, great to hear the thoughts of both our coach guests and our student-athlete guests for this week. And it's always fun when you get somebody in before a rivalry game, because you do feel it. You get to Wednesday, you're getting closer and closer. You're about 48 hours away from kickoff, and it's you've been through it so much. I mean, when does it really start when you start to really feel it before a big game?
I would say if I were coaching in this current situation, it would have been the second we walked off the field against Eau Claire North last week. Rivalries are big. You watch a lot of film in the offseason. Obviously, that's about building your culture, weight room, working on some 7-on-7 and stuff now. But ultimately, you circle some games on your calendar and you watch that film a little bit extra in the offseason, like what they did well last year, what you did well, what you were able to kind of find in their defense. Because when you play teams like Everest, Rapids, Rapids isn't a good example with new coaches here, but when you play Rapids, or when you play Everest and Spash and Rapids when they were running their option and stuff, you knew what you were going to get every year, both from an X's and O's standpoint, as well as from a toughness, right? Rapids was going to give you this with a little bit of a chippy edge to it, and Everest was going to try to bully you with their tradition, and Spash was probably going to try to beat you with their athletes. So just those different things and finding out how you can prepare. The one thing that is a little bit interesting to me, I wonder, is Everest is pretty much turned over. Coach, great new coach there, and Braden does a great job. But the names are gone, right? I mean, there's like some of their offsprings are there, the Coonins and the whatever, but Luke Coonin's gone and Tim Stralo's gone, and there certainly isn't, and there certainly aren't any Steffenhagens left. Mm-hmm. So some of that rock solid tradition that even extended past Wayne for years and years and years has really changed. So I always wonder how much some of that rivalry that exists, or that tradition at DC Everest that existed when they just completely dominated the Wisconsin Valley Conference. And at West, there's a lot of former players still on staff at Wausau West. So I think during this week, Everest, when we used to play East, there's a lot of talk at the end of practice when coaches kind of take a minute to reflect on not only practice, but what this week or what this game means. And I can't help but think about Coach Wimmer at Wausau West, defensive coordinator. I graduated from West in 1991. Tim's been coaching there ever since, and this is his week. Like, if there's one thing that raises his blood pressure higher than it ought to be, it's DC Everest. So every time when we get to this week, I think about Coach Wimmer and what he's saying at practice, and most importantly, what he is saying right before game time in that locker room is always very exciting. And there's just some extra emotion that goes into it.
A lot of interesting stuff you just said there. I remember, I think it was Logan George last year when he was here, and I think there was a sense that a lot of the kids at DC Everest wanted to start their own story. Yeah. That you go into Everest, you see it on Steffenhagen Field, you see those state championship footballs on the wall. Anybody that grew up around here, I went to school there. I went during those years. I went to the games. I was biggest regret. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna share. If your kids out there, even if you aren't the best player, you should go out. It's still the biggest regret of my life. I played in the youth football and played some quarterback, and I should have gone out. And that's still a regret that I have to this very day. But it was still a lot of fun to go to Steam on back then, Saturday afternoons.
Yep.
When I was going to school, people would say, "What?" No, they didn't have lights until about early 90s.
Yep.
But I do think that this group of evergreens, starting with Coach Mitchell and going through all these kids who did so much good last year, they want to start to build their own story. And I think that it doesn't, I don't think it takes away from the rivalry. It just makes it a little bit different in some ways.
It sure does. And I think that kind of has fed into what's happened for the previous 10 years, like post Stephen Hagen to Coach Mitchell, right? Like there was a time in there where I think that the coaches, and there's nothing bad about this, but that was kind of what they knew and the tradition they worked off of and lived off of. And I think this last year, and obviously they were aligned with some really talented players last year, as they are again this year, but it was a special group last year as they made it to the semifinals. But it was kind of the perfect opportunity for them to kind of start writing their own story. I think what keeps the rivalry alive is in talking with Shea, right? That these kids play multiple sports against each other. The other really big difference that's out there now, and this is maybe one of the reasons that not being the activities director anymore, maybe my blood pressure has gone down slightly, is one of the biggest changes is social media. So I think it used to be, Coach Nowinski always used to say one of the best things about beating DC Everest is you get all dressed up in your Warrior gear on Saturday after a big win, and you go over to Pizza Ranch or whatever with your Warrior gear on in Everest country, and you kind of remind people of what happened. Well, now it's all social media, right?
Yeah.
Leading up to it, the game day, during the game, and after the game, a lot of that trash talking, and oftentimes it's not even by the athletes, it's by the student body or people who don't know anything about the games.
Exactly.
But it certainly adds an extra sort of element to the rivalry.
And it's out there. And one of my favorite stories, a number of years ago, I did the game over at Steam. Did the XCO broadcast, wearing the West shirt. And the next day, I was having lunch with my mom and my sister. And my sister went to Everest the year after I went, graduated. And we're at Papillon's over on that side of town. And some friend of hers and the friend's mother stopped by the table. And then her mother goes to me and says, "How could you wear a Wausau West shirt at DC Everest?" And I think that's, it's sort of indicative. Because it means something.
What's interesting, and I've heard this about Mosenique, so there's a ton of tradition there as well with their history of their school and their sports, and I think this is true. I think sometimes when I talk about myself, Coach Johnson, Coach Freiberg, Coach Wimmer, I think sometimes we remember the rivalry different than it is. And I think when you talk about DC Everest, I think the parents remember it differently than the athletes. So I think there's two different levels of the rivalry. So. It's the parents, the coaches, and then the players who are living life today kind of have a different view on it as well.
What about the game? I think there's still a lot to learn about both these teams.
Yeah.
I think in terms of when they faced, I would say between both of the teams, when they faced what you would consider the top tier opponents, they haven't won yet.
Yep.
They've taken care of business in those games that they probably thought, hey, we're going to take care of business against. Now this game, it's a significant game. The winner's 2-0 in the conference. It makes you feel really good. It takes a little of the pressure off too, because when number one goal, I imagine, and you can say this more than I can, is to get to the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Get there as early as you can.
That's the first box that you check as you go through a season, and you never share this with your team or anybody else, but you do. You look at the 9-game schedule and you say these are the games we should win. These are the games we need to win to get that, whatever the magic number ends up being, 4 or 5 or whatever, conference, regular, whatever, non-conference. But that's the first box you check. Once you know you're going to make the playoffs, then you're competing for that conference championship. And then after that, it's how deep of a run can you make going forward. I think when you talk about where is this game at, we've talked about Spash, right? They sit at the top, and until somebody proves them otherwise this year, they're undefeated, and they've had the best wins so far. Everest is the returning conference champion, right? So as far as this matchup goes, I think if we talked about Vegas and betting on this show, which we obviously don't, I think people probably says since the games at DC Everest, they kind of had their way with us a little bit last year. I mean, we had some injuries and that sort of thing, especially at the quarterback position, but they won it. They took it and took it to us a little bit in the second half. So I think Everest probably gets a nod at this point, but it's very different teams than it was on that field last year over at Tom Field. So I think you said it best with there's a lot of question marks, and I think we will know a lot more about the conference after Friday night at Steam Stadium.
Let's look at the other games in the Valley. The old River Jug game, Wisconsin Rapids and Stevens Point. You know there's at least, and I know he would never say it out loud, but you got to know that for Coach Mike Krenz going into Stevens Point on Friday night, he wants his team to perform well.
Absolutely. And I hope for his sake and the Rapids program that they can. I mean, obviously this is a tough game for them for sure. On paper, it probably doesn't look great for the Red Raiders. However, like you said, Coach Krenz has coached at Spash. Coach Krenz has had some really nice success. And my bet is the things he's doing at Rapids are very similar to what he did at Spash with a very developed and ready a team that was ready to win a conference championship. So, but he's doing the things there. But we talk about what's being said at the end of practices in the Everest West game. I would imagine there's some really good things being said in Wisconsin Rapids this week.
Must win for Marshfield, home against Eau Claire Memorial?
No doubt. Yeah, I really think it is. And based on what I've seen, I think they take care of business. I guess my question with Marshfield is, and who are they on offense, right? Because with what they've done, they haven't really rushed the ball well. They've still using two quarterbacks, it looks like, based on the numbers from last week, and neither one of them seems to be setting the world on fire. So when they go up against an opponent that has struggled 0-3 coming into this game, I think they're really trying to establish who and what they are. And honestly, with Marshfield being 0-3, very tough schedule, mind you, 0-3.
They started slow last year and got to the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I would say Eau Claire Memorial probably looks at them and says this is one they feel like they have to win as well.
Eau Claire North and Superior, the two teams Wausau West has beat. So we've seen both these squads, and again, it's one of those crossover games. Does not count in the Valley, but it does count towards playoff qualification. And Eau Claire North at their brand new, spanking new, beautiful field at their school.
Yeah, I don't know, having watched both of them play, I feel like Eau Claire North is the better football team. I think at each level, the line, the skilled players backfield.
That running back. You know, we talked about, I think, was it you that came up last week after the game and that big bowling ball, I think it was like 5'9", 200 pounds, and I was really impressed.
Yeah, and I don't feel like they gave him the ball enough.
I think he got it like 10 times. Yeah. I would give it 20 times.
Yes,
you know?
I would agree. And I felt like he had more touches in the game last year over there. So yeah, I think if they get their running game going, I think that's the one thing when we played Superior that they really struggled defensively. And I think that Eau Claire North has enough weapons to make it difficult for Superior. And Superior still has not proven that they can score points.
If you're a football fan here in Wausau, the Wausau general area, you got some really good matchups to choose from this Friday night. I mentioned West and Everest, but Tom Field Friday in the Great Northern, Rhinelander and East. And based on the results last week, both these teams, it gets late early, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I think we've talked with the Mo's and E kids in East. That's kind of the local rivalry in this conference. But I feel like with Wausau East's success in basketball and Rhinelander's historic solid basketball program, I feel like this is a pretty good rivalry and is going to only grow over time. I love the fact that Rhinelander showed some real signs of life against Lakeland last week, scoring 32 points, being up in the second half. And I think East is kind of probably looking for their identity after losing a tough game to Tomahawk, which I think we all would agree seems to be a really tough, hard-nosed football team. So obviously nothing lost or nothing to feel bad about in losing to Tomahawk, other than that's probably one they had circled on their schedule as a win. So I think Wausau East starts looking at this because I think they came out of last season with how they ended up coming into this season knowing Medford would take a step back and that they had beat Mosinee last year, that competing for a conference championship was probably on their board this year.
And I think the way that they played against Logan in week 2, it also was a confidence because they played much better this season. I think going into last week, they probably felt really good. Now it's like, okay, sort of one of those first real challenges of the year. That's what I think about high school sports. You're going to face challenges, and how do you respond?
Right, and I think if they're playing maybe Anago, who had a really tough week against Medford last week, maybe they come into this looking at what do they call it, a get right game, right? Like get back on the right track. I think Rhinelander is going to be a tough game, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how this one plays out.
Another interesting game is Lakeland trying to stay unbeaten, but Mosinee comes to Minocqua Friday night. That's, again, I think we're 3 weeks into the season, and there's still so much I think we're still waiting to find out. And I think for both these teams, you got to give Lakeland a lot of credit for what they've been able to accomplish. And Mosinee, they had the really great win against Stratford. They had a bit of a rough go against Menasha, and then last week maybe a little tighter than we expected.
Yeah, I think in the time that I've been doing this show with you now, 3-4 years, whatever we are, this is the conference that I look at and say, I don't know.
Yeah,
right. I mean, obviously, I think nobody wrote Medford off, but last week I think they kind of came screaming back saying we're not rolling over and giving away a conference championship, and Lakeland's been playing tough. I think we've always looked, and Lakeland has struggled to kind of get their offense going early in the season, and they feel like they're scoring a lot of points and clicking on all cylinders. So, and when you look at what Treve Stoffel not only does, he's super special athlete, but I think the other part of that is what Treve Stoffel has to do in order for them to be successful. If he has to work that much harder on defense, a team that scores that many points, that could be an X factor in this game.
Medford and Merrill, and you said it. Medford had an emphatic first conference win last week. Merrill again going into Mosinee. They've struggled against Mosinee since they went to the GNC, but they had a one-score game last week. Another game that's going to, I think, say a little bit more about what Medford is and an opportunity for Merrill.
Yeah, I think in talking with Coach Wadzinski a couple times last year, how they ended the season, they seem to be on an upward trajectory right now. Obviously, they would have much rather had the win than a 7-point loss last week. But coming into Medford, I think one of the things that they look at this, obviously they're going in trying to win. Coach has a good game plan. Coach Ted's coming over from Medford looking to stay undefeated and keep that conference championship. But the one thing for Merrill, if they can come out of this game either with a huge win or kind of like they did the Mosinee game, being extremely competitive, they now have both those teams in their rearview mirror and can kind of look forward to the rest of the conference and say, here come our wins.
Tomahawk at Anago. It's like for the first time, it's like, okay, Tomahawks will go in there and win. That's sometimes the biggest trap, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and Anago, going to Anago, right? I mean, that's never been an easy place to play or win. Obviously, look at all the state championships for Coach Schofield over there. And Tomahawk has to work hard. You had mentioned last week you saw in the news when they interviewed Coach Riley at the end of the game that they were dinged up a little bit in that game, or we're missing some guys in there. So this is that time of year, right? When from week to week, when you don't know. It was interesting talking with Coach Knapmiller when he talked about Iola Scandinavia. Was that? Yeah, being down three of their returners from that. When we see that score, we think, oh my God, Abbotsford just dominated. So to hear from Coach that they were missing some guys. So that's the part of the season we're in right now, from week to week. Who's missing? And like you said, we talk about Newman. If you're missing one guy, you're missing two. If you're missing two, you're missing four if they're two-way players.
4 interesting games in the CWC Large. You start with Stratford at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, and this one has turned into a pretty good rivalry in recent years. They played in the playoffs one of these years in recent annals, and Stratford 1-2, Whitburn 2-1, both 1-0 in the conference. This game being played in Wittenberg.
I tell you what, I think when you are, just like we talked about in Medford in the GNC, and teams thinking this is our year to get Medford, right? Because of how their first 2 games went. I think there's people in the CWC Large, in particular Wittenberg, Amherst, maybe Waiwega, who think this is our year to get Stratford, right? They've been, let's be honest, they've been untouchable for 3 or 4 years, like going into that game and you come out hoping you're healthy and that you maybe competed for a portion of it. Mm-hmm. This is the year when these teams who've been sitting in that number 2 and 3 position in that conference feel like this is our opportunity to take the next step and to take that jump. And I'll be honest, this is probably one of the games I'm most looking forward to seeing.
Got Marathon at Amherst. And, again, we've talked about Marathon. And Coach Dinkel, I think, and I was talking to somebody around that program this week. Again, everybody's really, I think, excited about where the program is going. A couple of tough losses, but that team could easily be 3-0. And then you got Amherst, who is 3-0 and have not been threatened. Obviously, it's a tough matchup going to Amherst for Marathon, but I'm curious to see that if they're able to continue with True Thurs and you got Garrett Bracewell, big play guy on the outside, it wouldn't shock me to see Marathon give them a really good battle.
Yeah, I think that's what's special about teams that are in Marathon's position right now, is having that new coach. It also makes them harder to prepare for, right? Like we talked a little while ago, you know what you're going to get against Everest and Rabbit, whatever. You don't know what you're going to get against Marathon right now. Maybe there's similar X's and O's a little bit, offense and defense. I don't know that for sure. But what you're getting is a team with a different attitude and maybe a different level of toughness and hopefully a different level of execution. So definitely could be in the favor of Marathon, but certainly a tough matchup with as well as Amherst has played.
Another interesting game is Wyawega Fremont and Spencer Columbus. Wyawega, until last week, have been playing some really good football. Spencer Columbus this season has looked a lot sharper than they did the last couple of years. They were struggled the last couple of years, but every game this season they have been there. They've won as well, but even last week to be in Stratford, go into second half tied, it looks like a much improved Spencer Columbus team as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think Spencer Columbus has certainly surprised me from week to week, and I was also surprised with Wyawega, Fremont, and Whitburn last week. Like I felt like that one was going to be a maybe harder fought battle or a closer game, and Wittenberg really kind of took it to him last week. So I mean, Spencer Columbus pulls this one off. I think we look at this conference a little differently.
And another team that's kind of throwing a monkey wrench into it is Loyal Greenwood. That was a team I think was at the bottom of the league last season. Marathon. I did the Marathon Loyal Greenwood game last year over in Greenwood, and Marathon pretty much dominated. They struggled throughout the course of that conference campaign, and this season, as we heard from Coach Knapmiller, it sounds like he was very impressed with what he saw in week one. They've continued the last 2 weeks as well, and they have Colby coming in. They could be 4-0. I mean, that I don't think many people had that on their bingo card.
No, and obviously at Loyal Greenwood, that certainly helps. I don't actually know which one it's at, Loyal or Greenwood, but I think that's in their advantage. And I think the one thing that stuck out to me about what Coach Knapmiller said about Loyal Greenwood was their size and their physicality. And I think in a conference like that size makes all the difference in the world.
Merriwood CWC. Edgar has a fill game this week. Rosholt left the conference. This would have been the Rosholt week. And they're facing Marquette Academy. And I can say I don't know anything about Marquette Academy, but I would imagine that going into Edgar, they're going to be tested.
Well, and I was really hoping, as I got my notes from you yesterday, I was really hoping for an in-depth knowledge about Marquette Academy. Is that a Wisconsin school?
That's a good question. I got to look this up here. Yeah. But for Edgar, it's about, again, they defensively, they just, every year they come out and it's just hard. I mean, for them to shut out Stratford, for them to shut out Auburndale, that says right there, this is going to be a very tough team all season long.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar's year in and year out, Edgar's offensive statistics are extremely misleading because a lot of blowouts. So a lot of those kids don't play much in the second half, get a lot of touches. They're really good running backs, often have 10 or fewer runs in a game. So, but when they are dialed up on defense like this, that makes them just about unbeatable.
Marquette Academy is a private Roman Catholic high school in Ottawa, Illinois.
Ottawa, Illinois.
So there you go. But
I'll be interested.
390 students, K-12, PK in grades PK through K-12. So I mean that's the entire.
Yep.
So well, it'll be interesting.
Yep.
For folks who go out to Edgar to see that game. Pacelli at Abbotsford. Pacelli again. Just I think the numbers are going to be a problem because you heard Abbotsford's got the numbers.
Yeah. Abbotsford has the numbers and they rush for 400 or 500 yards a game. I think when Abbotsford gets to these games, the Pacellis, the Assumptions, I think that makes Pittsville probably as well, stopping their run game with what they get off the bus with these other schools, smaller, hurting for numbers, and probably hurting for size as well. I joked with Coach about fill in the box. I mean, and that's really what you have to do. And I think that listening to Coach talk about his line and what they've been able to do and the depth they have on their line. Sounds like some sophomores are ready to make a push. Should be a good night for Abbotsford.
And then you have Auburndale at Pittsville. It's interesting because Pittsville did not play last week.
I was just going to say, that's the score we didn't see, so they must have not found an opponent.
They did not. They were supposed to play Rochelle. They didn't get a chance, and that's interesting this time of year. What's your take on that?
I think that's super tough. We talk all the time, right? That it's a 9-game season, and it's a football. Even with our 3-sport athletes, football in this day and age is a 365-day sport. You're doing something for football all the time. Coaches for sure, players always have it in the back of their mind doing things. So when you work that hard for a football season and you only get 9 games and then you lose one of them, that's a really tough pill to swallow. So I feel bad for Pittsville, and I'm sure they did not play. I know you shouldn't say it like that because they didn't want to. They just couldn't find an opponent. The way it's set up in Wisconsin now, the non-conference games are week 1 and week 2.
You have to look outside of the state.
And then everybody's conference. Yeah, so that's tough.
And then Iola Scandinavia at Assumption, and I'd heard as well before Coach Knapmiller said that Iola was really banged up, and that's that's kind of the X factor in this game.
Yeah, and Assumption had a nice win last week against Pacelli, and probably look to take some of that momentum and give Iola a run for their money.
8-player, as I said, a lot of good action in Wausau Friday night. It can be at Steam, it can be at Tom Field, it can be at the Balliet Field over at Newman Catholic. Cardinals take on Niagara. Both teams are 2-1 on the season. For Newman, again, a little banged up after last week, but I think the Cardinals are going to be able to bounce back. It's such a well-coached football team, but again, you lose your middle linebacker, you lose your center, 2-way player, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. And for teams that start with 19 or 20 players, you lose them. Boy, it's hard to make them good.
Yeah, absolutely. I am looking forward to getting over to a game under the lights at Newman Catholic when it works, because I want to see those lights flash when they score a touchdown.
There you go. And Owen Withy at McDonald Thursday night, which is an interesting game in 8-player, I think, for folks who want to see where McDonald is and the defending state champs. So Owen Withy, those teams met in the playoffs last season. In fact, I was there. We went and watched that game. It was a interesting game. And then you have as well Athens in action. They travel to Bruce as they try to go 3-1 on the season. We got about 2 minutes to go. It's one thing I noticed last week. There seemed to be more injuries to me. It just seemed like when you got into the conference, it seemed like that intensity did ratchet up.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this is the time of year too when you're trying to figure out what kind of football team you are. Now there's injuries, right? Like I don't know the specifics, I don't want to talk about it, but you hear one coach talked about Christian Fuentes, season-ending surgery. That's an injury, right? He's done. You feel horrible for him. You feel horrible for his teammates and all the work he put in. But this is also the time of year when the going gets tough, right? And you start to find out what's the difference between being hurt and being injured, or being uncomfortable and being injured. And I think this is where you kind of find out about your mental toughness, the team's mentality, your leadership. And I think the teams who rise above in those situations are the ones you start to see in those close games, the ones who come out on top.
And I got to say, just generally looking at the lineup for this week, this is the best week we've seen so far this year.
Absolutely. Conference play certainly plays a role in that. I tell you what, I'm really looking forward to obviously the West Everest game. I think that's going to be a great game. So we'll be interested to see how that plays out. But there's some really good ones in the CWC large and small. But
Mosinee, Lakeland,
I was just going to say the GNC for me from top to bottom is kind of must see. Like I will be chomping at the bit to get home from Steam and see those scores.
Absolutely. And Stratford Whitburn as well is the one I'm very curious about. So a lot to look forward to this weekend. And we will then take it all in, find out who's going to be our coach guest next week, who will be our student athlete guest, and we'll meet back up here next week at 6 o'clock.
I'm sure we'll also be talking about a big win for the Badgers over Alabama.
There you go. But thanks again for joining us. Big High School Sports Show, WXCO.